All right, it is final Oscar predictions time. I am just going to not pay attention to the outside noise. I'm not going to be influenced by other people's predictions other than the shorts categories. I'm not going to be influenced by anonymous ballots. I'm just locking these in here right now. And I'm stressing myself out about it because I'm not confident in a lot of these categories. The tech categories more so, but there's still quite a few categories where I'm just really 50-50 on. So I'm going to talk through it here on camera, make some decisions live on air here. And you guys, I need you to drop your predictions in the comments because you guys like help me with my predictions, honestly. I mean, thinking back to Oscar nomination time, I was predicting Real Pain and Sing Sing for the last two spots in Best Picture, and I got a few comments telling me, I don't think A Real Pain's gonna get in because it's going to be down on like those number 8 through 10 spots on people's ballots. It's just not gonna land high enough. So I took that into consideration and I swapped it for Nickel Boys at the last moment, which I thought could get a lot of number 1 and 2 votes. And bam, look what happened. So you guys helped me out a lot, honestly. Now I went like 19 for 23 the last 2 years, which I thought was awesome, honestly. But I did go 3 for 3 on the shorts both years, so maybe that'll get just screwed up and I'll go 16 to 23 this time. But, you know, it's fun. I love good competition. It's just a blast to predict these, watch these award shows, see how many I get right. Sometimes I do great, sometimes not so much. It's just for fun. That's what it is. So let's have some fun. Let's get into Best Picture. And here we have a two-horse race. If you try to bring something else to the pedestal of actually being win competitive, I think that's just silly. Like, if The Brutalist overperforms and gets director, actor, cinematography score, I'm still gonna be, when they're reading the Best Picture card off, gonna be like, yeah, it's not The Brutalist. It's still between Anora and Conclave, unless both just lose every category they're up for. So, like I said, strictly between these two films. Let's run through it. Anora has PGA, DGA, WGA. That combo has only lost once. It is nearly unbeatable. Anora also has that Critics' Choice win for Best Picture, but Anora has felt like a pretty weak frontrunner this entire time. Like, even with those three major guilds and the Critics' Choice for Best Picture, I'm still not 100% confident in it actually taking this award because if you're going to be predicting it for three categories to win here, that would be the best night it's had this entire award season, which I do think is 100% entirely possible, but it's still just weird that, it only wins picture at Critics' Choice. It is only able to take home actress and casting at BAFTA. Not that I was expecting it to actually take home a lot of awards there, but still, it didn't take home screenplay. It blanks at the Globes, it blanks at SAG, but it wins the three other major guilds. So you can make an argument that because there's only one award at those three guilds, that was as big of a night as this film winning 3 or 4 Oscars on Oscar night. And, that's fair. But still, the concern is there because it has been weaker. We had thought for months before the Golden Globes that Enora, like, if anything, it's just a shoo-in for original screenplay. It's not even that. It's a real competitive race there. We'll get to that later, obviously, but it's felt like a weak frontrunner. Conclave has the BAFTA win, has a SAG Ensemble win, and if it was eligible for WGA, it would have WGA behind it. It is maybe the front runner for editing. We'll also get to that, but it at least has that guaranteed screenplay win at the Oscars, which immediately shoots it up. And that one time where PGA, DJ, WGA combo did not pan out at the Oscars was the Brokeback Mountain and Crash year. Crash had SAG, WGA. Once again, that would be something that Conclave would have had it been eligible for WGA. Plus, it has the BAFTA win. So that kind of puts the stars in alignment, maybe, for that to happen again. But a lot of the reason why Brokeback Mountain lost was just because of homophobia and wasn't because of Crash actually being the better film in a lot of people's eyes. So you have to take that with a grain of salt still. Also, maybe winning those other three guilds and blanking at SAG is something of concern, but the Hurt Locker also did that and obviously won picture, director, few other awards. So it's perfectly fine that Honora did not take home any SAGs as long as it does have those guilds. It does still have that strong guild support overall. And a thing with BAFTA is BAFTA Best Film, you can maybe attribute Conclave winning that to it's a British film. You can maybe attribute SAG Ensemble win being that Conclave was just the film sweeping ensemble awards the entire award season, from critics groups to the Critics' Choice for Ensemble, and then finally there at SAG Ensemble. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because it won BAFTA Best Film or because it won SAG Ensemble, that means it's actually going to translate into a Best Picture win. And that is ultimately what is just holding me off. Both films, I do think, are going to do very well on a preferential ballot. It makes sense why they're the top two because of that. Both films are going to get a lot of those number 2 through 4 votes, and that's great for them. But Honora also, I think, has a lot more of that number 1 vote passion. So I feel like my hand is still forced to go to Honora here, despite the fact that it has been that weak frontrunner. I am going to stick with Honora as my prediction for Best Picture because it is going to get those number 1 votes and do well on those subsequent numbers on the preferential, whereas Conclave, not so much on the number 1. So that is where I'm going with Best Picture. I will still be very much on the edge of my seat when they are reading that Best Picture card at the end of the ceremony, but I feel relatively okay with just closing my eyes, going with Honora. And moving on to director here, we do kind of have a split race here. Sean Baker has the DGA and the Indie Spirit, not that that actually matters, but he has the DGA. Brady Corbet has the Globe. He has the BAFTA. A lot of people have been making comparisons with The Brutalist to The Power of the Dog and Roma because they're these big, technically impressive films that are really challenging and are ultimately just too much for a broad audience to latch onto. They do really well with critics, but not as well with a broader audience. And both of those films won Best Director, so the thought for a while was, yeah, Brady Corbet is going to win Best Director, but the film's just not going to be able to take home the top prize at the end of the day because it can't reach that audience that a Honora or a Conclave can. But the problem with Brady Corbet here is that Roma and Power of the Dog were far stronger. The Brutalist did not win BAFTA. The Power of the Dog and Roma won BAFTA Best Film. Brady Corbet did not win the Critics' Choice or the DGA, whereas Alfonso Cuarón and Jane Campion swept the season with those awards. So it made sense why they were still taking director. Brady Corbet doesn't have all of these going for him, and he is also very much a newcomer. A lot of people didn't know who Brady Corbet was before The Brutalist came onto the award scene at the Venice Film Festival, whereas Jane Campion, Alfonso Cuarón, a decade plus of just absolutely stellar work, such respected veterans, it made sense why they were winning Best Director for that reason as well. That's another thing Corbet just does not have going for him. So I just think that with the fact that the film's so challenging and audiences aren't getting onto it, with the fact that it's weaker than some of the comparisons you could make it to, with the fact that Corbet's new, I don't think he wins director at the end of the day. I do think Sean Baker makes the most sense to predict here, and that is why I am predicting him. This film, ultimately, if it is winning Best Picture, like others have pointed out, is because it is a director having his time. Sean Baker has built up a stellar body of work over the last decade. Everyone that sees them loves Tangerine, loves the Florida Project, loves the Red Rocket. And Honora is just kind of where he just rises up, and this is his time. And it makes sense why that plus the DGA award, which 19 of the last 21 DGA winners have won the Oscar. It makes sense why those two things in tandem are going to win Sean Baker this award. Also, with that DGA, think of it more as 20 out of 21 because one of those times was Ben Affleck for Argo. If he was nominated, he would have won. So Sam Mendes is really the only outlier here. I think with that DGA win, with the whole career narrative that Baker has built up, all of the goodwill he has in the film industry, you see a lot of people championing him. You see so many people just get around with what he is saying when he got up and made that speech at the Indie Spirits about independent filmmaking and how we need to treat our directors better. It seems like Sean Baker is just having his time, and that's why I'm predicting him. If you told me, though, even less than a month ago, that Best Director would be the category I'm most confident Honora is taking, I would have thought you were insane. Moving on to Best Actress, this is an interesting one because we have never had a lineup this award season where Demi Moore, Mikey Madison, and Fernanda Torres all competed against each other. So I truly don't know how these votes are going to split at the end of the day. Torres was in the Golden Globe drama category, whereas Madison and Moore were in comedy, and Torres was not nominated at Critics' Choice, BAFTA, SAG. Maybe you could take that as Fernanda Torres has no chance, but I really think she does. It's obvious that the Oscars watched I'm Still Here more, way more than any of these other awards bodies. I mean, it's not a matter of the Oscars like the film more, it's that they actually watched it and then had the passion to vote for it because they saw the film. BAFTA did not see the film. It's not that Fernanda Torres wasn't nominated, she wasn't even longlisted. It's obvious those voters did not watch the movie. So when people actually see the film, they walk out feeling so passionate about it and about Fernanda Torres. I mean, Torres basically single handedly carried the film to a Best Picture nominee, which is unprecedented with its track record this award season leading up to those Oscar nominations. So I really do think Torres has a lot of passion around here, and I would not be surprised if she actually does take home the award at the end of the day. And if she does, boy, I would be so ecstatic for her. I would be really happy about it. But I do just find it hard to actually place my prediction on her. I would love it if she won, but it's just so hard with the fact that she was only nominated at the Globe to actually predict her. So I'm leaning more towards Mikey Madison and Demi Moore. Both of these actresses have a lot going for them. Demi Moore has the Golden Globe, the Critics' Choice, and the SAG Award. She's made incredible speeches at all of them where, she just gets more people on her side because of those speeches. She has the career narrative, but she also has the worthy performance. So, she would make a good winner. It would be cool to see. It would be cool to see an Oscar winner for such an insane horror film like that. Even if she wouldn't be your pick, that would just be a cool ass thing to see in the first place. But yeah, and Moore also has the fact that the film is winning Best Makeup, and we know how Best Makeup and a lead acting win tend to correlate a lot. So there's a real chance that that career narrative paired with the makeup win, paired with the fact that her performance is actually awards worthy, gets her the win at the end of the day. Mikey Madison, on the other hand, she has BAFTA, which is arguably the most important of the four precursors for lead actress contenders. And her film is winning Best Picture, or at least I think it is. So Best Picture plus BAFTA is probably just as equal to Demi Moore's 3 of the 4 precursor wins. So it's really tough to predict between the two, and I don't know how that vote splitting with Fernanda Torres is going to factor in here. Does she take more from one or the other, or is she taking both equally, or is she just going to win because she's here? I don't know. So it's real interesting to see. Another thing that I am thinking about here is that the Oscars have been going with lead actors of Best Picture films recently. Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer, Michelle Yeoh in Everything Everywhere, Frances McDormand in Nomadland. And also, when BAFTA pivots away to a performance in a stronger film, a lot of times the Oscars will go with that. Think of Olivia Colman in The Favorite, Anthony Hopkins in The Father, Frances McDormand in Nomadland. I mean, Frances McDormand's only win was BAFTA, and she won the Oscar because of that plus Best Picture. So it's a very reasonable assumption to make that Madison, with all of this, is going to be able to come out on top of Demi Moore, who has more precursor wins, and it would make a lot of sense. But also, something that I am just thinking about is that I have predicted Mikey Madison to win 3 of the 4 precursors, and she's lost all 3 that I've predicted her to win, which is kind of crazy to me, honestly. So it really just seems that with Honora being the frontrunner for Best Picture, but being a weaker one than any of Oppenheimer, Everything Everywhere, and Nomadland, she's just not able to get over the edge at some of these places. And so I think that the vibes are kind of pointing in the direction of Demi Moore, even though that Madison has a lot going for her. And honestly, I feel like with Honora here, it's got to lose one of the 4 categories that it is predicted to win by a lot of people because it isn't as strong as those films that I just said. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Mikey Madison just isn't able to take it, and people just get around this being Demi Moore's time here, and Demi Moore end up taking it. She has the precursors, she has the speeches, she has the career narrative, she has the makeup win. It makes sense why Demi Moore would triumph at the end of the day. So that is what I am going to go with here. Also, another thing with Mikey Madison is if Honora being the front runner is because it is a filmmaker having his time, that doesn't necessarily mean Mikey Madison needs to have her time. It really feels like the people that are having their time are Sean Baker and then Demi Moore. So that is why I'm going to predict Demi Moore here. I am really split. Like I am that on predicting these two. So like if you're leaning more towards Madison because of BAFTA and Best Picture and this and that and this and that, go with your heart with that one. I'm predicting more, but like I said, it's like 51-49, and then Torres is right there as well. So it's razor thin edges here. This is the category that I am most looking forward to on Oscar night because it's the tightest one. Best Actor, I don't think this one is as difficult to predict. I know Timothée Chalamet did just win the SAG award, but Brody had been feeling like, okay, he's just going to take it. The SAG Awards were after voting had already closed. Timothée Chalamet's speech wouldn't have influenced them. And honestly, SAG, with that just insanely huge voting membership, it's obvious that they loved A Complete Unknown and they did not care for The Brutalist. So it makes sense why that would be the one place where Chalamet would win. I still think Adrian Brody takes this Oscar. It's obvious that Adrian Brody has been the point of The Brutalist that has been the strongest throughout award season. I mean, just look to Critics' Choice for an example of that. He was the film's only win there. And if you look at the anonymous ballots, and I'm not saying that anonymous ballots mean anything, they don't. But it's just a sentiment I've picked up in some of them that voters may not fully connect with The Brutalist, but they love Adrian Brody's performance because it is so just undeniably excellent. So that's where I think this is going to go. I think Brody still has this in the bag. Supporting actress, I know a lot of people are still wanting something else to happen. The Amelia Perez controversy, this and that, this and that. Look, BAFTA and SAG prove that the Carla Sofia Gascon tweets just are not going to affect Zoe Saldana. Zoe Saldana is going to win this. I mean, I saw like Variety predict Isabella Rossellini. Like, come on. This is Saldana. She's swept up to this point. She's not going to lose. Supporting actor, Kieran Culkin. Let's move on. Original screenplay. This is another one where I am really close on. We have thought that Honora was just going to be taking original screenplay all throughout award season, and if it was winning any award, that was the award it was winning. But it has proven to be really shaky in this category for some reason, losing Critics' Choice, Golden Globe to obviously a film in adapted, but still lost the Globe, lost the Critics' Choice, lost the BAFTA. It did win the WGA, which is great news for the film, but it is really shaky. And it could very well lose this. Honestly, for a second there, I was predicting Honora to only win picture and director. And I was starting to predict A Real Pain in here. And I still kind of want to because I can sense a lot of passion in the industry around Jesse Eisenberg and around his script. And with just how just writery the film is, I can see reasons why A Real Pain would end up taking this. I can see why a lot of people have that passion for it, but at the end of the day, it's just too hard to actually predict A Real Pain because it's not in Best Picture. We have not gotten a non-Best Picture nominee winning Best Screenplay since Best Picture expanded, so I'm not going to break with the mold on that. I'm going to say that the fact that Honora it beat A Real Pain at WGA, even though that it lost to it at BAFTA. I'm going to stick with Honora because Honora has WGA and the Best Picture front-running status. Adapted Screenplay. This is Conclave. Let's move on. International Feature. Now this is a category where I think those controversies can catch up with Amelia Perez. Zoe Saldana just wasn't going to be affected by it because Zoe Saldana did nothing. But International Feature is the category to punish Amelia Perez if you're going to punish it. And I really do feel like there is a lot of hesitation around giving this film this award. And also, we got to think of recency bias in these awards. A lot of Academy members probably had not seen I'm Still Here until after it got that Best Picture nomination, and they were finally starting to catch up with the film, finally seeing it and loving it when they came out. I think the Best Picture nomination and Torres's nomination gave the film so much visibility, and because of that, because everyone who comes out of that film feels something, feels a different type of way in the best possible way for I'm Still Here. I think I'm Still Here, that passion is going to beat out the fact that Amelia Perez has 13 Oscar nominations, the fact that Amelia Perez hasn't lost one of these international feature categories up till this point, because it is obvious that the Academy loved I'm Still Here more than any other place aside from literally Brazil. So I am going to go with my prediction as I'm Still Here. Documentary feature. This is one where my brain is getting all scrambled because for months and months, No Other Land has been the frontrunner. But No Other Land has not won any major industry precursors. In fact, the only one here that has was Porcelain War, which won DGA and DGA only. Now, maybe it's happened a couple times where a DGA only winner has gone on to win Best Documentary. I don't really know. I'm not very knowledgeable of the Best Documentary category, but I don't think that winning DGA Best Documentary is like this big correlative with Best Documentary at the Oscars like Best Director is or something like that. So I'm not going to take that much stock into that. And because I just cannot in my brain imagine something other than No Other Land being read off that card. Because I can't imagine that, I am going to go with No Other Land. No Other Land still just feels like the most important film here, the one that speaks to the times we're living in the most, and it feels like the one with the most passion. You know, if something like Superman was here, Superman would easily be the winner, but it's not. So I think No Other Land is still going to take it, and because I really am not convinced about any of the other nominees, I'm not going to break from my No Other Land prediction, even with its shoddy precursor run up to this point. Animated feature, this has been one of the most interesting categories this year, honestly, because It had felt like Flo was getting the upper hand after that Golden Globe win, and then The Wild Robot was starting to come out on top, and then people thought Flo could get it back with a BAFTA win, and then Wallace and Gromit won. So this category has been kind of up in the air this entire award season. Flo, I would love it if it won, but the fact that it only has the Golden Globe is just preventing me from going with it. Wallace and Gromit, even though that it has the BAFTA, like it's a British thing. It makes sense why Wallace and Gromit would win there and not the Oscar. I feel like I kind of have to go with the Wild Robot here. It feels like my hand is forced in the Wild Robot's direction. I still think Flo can absolutely win, but the Wild Robot, having Critics' Choice, having Annie's, having PGA, I think it's enough to give it the win. I don't think this is a Spider-Verse versus The Boy and the Heron like last year was. The Boy and the Heron was Miyazaki. It was potentially Miyazaki's last film. It had that narrative going for it on top of the international support. Flow doesn't have something like that this year. It doesn't have that same narrative. And also, The Wild Robot is not a sequel to a film they had already awarded before. Spider-Verse was. So I think The Wild Robot and Flow, it's different enough, and I feel good enough about what The Wild Robot has gotten up to this point with the fact that it got a score and sound nomination. I'm going with The Wild Robot. Cinematography, I know Nosferatu won Critics' Choice. I don't think that's enough to get this film a win at the Oscars. I know Maria won the ASC, and that's pretty funny to me, but I don't think that means Maria's going to win this either. I mean, it makes sense why ASC would award Ed Lockman. He is basically the Diane Warren, Glenn Close of cinematographers here, where he just gets nominated and never wins the award. So it makes sense. He's really old. He's in his 80s. There was a report like a few days ago, maybe a week ago, that Maria has the potential to maybe be his last film. So it makes sense why ASC would want to award him. I do just think it makes sense to predict The Brutalist here. BAFTA, British Society of Cinematographers, it's the technical achievement of the year in filmmaking. I think this is The Brutalist, despite, the loss here and there, ASC and Critics' Choice. I just think Lowell Crowley's work here on The Brutalist, it makes the most sense to award. Editing. This is a category that I really had no clue what was happening until the BAFTAs, and you're going to see this. I am going to go with the BAFTAs on a lot of these tech categories because BAFTAs are really good in the tech categories with the correlations. So I'm going with Conclave here. Anora, with it being a weaker Best Picture frontrunner, like there are a lot of wrinkles in it, I'm not banking on Anora winning Best Editing just because it's winning Best Picture. Like Sean Baker is not about to win 4 Oscars. I think this is Conclave. Wicked, honestly, might be my number 2 because if it ends up winning Best Sound, then I could see it winning Best Editing here. I think it actually has the most on the anonymous ballots, which is interesting, but ultimately, I have no reason to go with anything other than Conclave since Conclave won the BAFTA, Challengers won Critics' Choice, and that's not nominated. The Ace Eddies aren't till after the Oscars. Like, I have nothing else to go off of other than the fact that Conclave won BAFTA, so that's what I'm going with. Production design, this is Wicked. Let's move on. Costume design, once again, easily Wicked. Makeup and hairstyling, this is, I think, obviously the Substance here. I mean, it's won everywhere. Yeah, horror movie, body horror, yada yada, genre bias, horror bias. The Substance is winning this award. Visual effects. Planet of the Apes, yeah, it won VES. The 3 ones previous won VES and didn't win the Oscar. BAFTA went with Dune. I'm going with Dune here for the Oscars. Sound. This is potentially the most up in the air tech category here because I am not 100% sure on anything. A Complete Unknown won that Cinema Audio Society Award, but Dune won BAFTA and it won Motion Picture Sound Editors. So Dune has a little bit of a leg up here. but a complete unknown can very well take it. Honestly, if this was still a split year where we had sound mixing and sound editing, I would predict a complete unknown in mixing and Dune in sound editing, but because they're one category, I'm having to fight with them in my head. And once again, I am ultimately just going to default to BAFTA here. You think of a complete unknown, Wicked, Amelia Perez, these are all music based films. Maybe the music based films just kind of split votes here, and Dune just being, I think, the most sound. I mean, the sandworm scene alone is the most sound of the year, so I think Dune is just going to be able to rise above. The fact that BAFTA and the other sound guild went for it, I feel okay with predicting it for sound here. Best score? This is another one where it was a little bit up in the air up until the BAFTAs, and the BAFTAs, I think, gave us the correct path here. The Brutalist won BAFTA. I think The Brutalist makes sense to win the Oscar. Best song, Amelia Perez, controversies aside, Zoe Saldana and El Mal are the ones that come out unscathed. It's just going to get hit in every other category: international, picture, director, everything. It's just Saldana and El Mal that won't be affected. El Mal has won everything up to this point. I don't see why it would stop. I don't see why a song would be affected by the controversy. So El Mal's going to win here. On to the first short category, we have documentary short. I have watched all the nominees here. My personal vote would go to Incident. But the thing with these short categories that I've learned over the last couple years, just go with the front runner, go with where the tide is taking you. Because if you overthink these and try to spend hours on end thinking about which one is going to win the short category, you're probably going to be wrong. Just go with the front runner. And I feel like where we are being taken in Doc Short is I Am Ready Warden. Wouldn't be anywhere close to my pick. I just think it's kind of but I'm just not going to overthink it. I'm just going to go with this, even though that I think Incident really should be winning. Animated short. This is an interesting one to predict, maybe the toughest one to predict in my opinion, because I also saw all 5 of these nominees, and I thought Wander to Wonder was just brilliant stylistically, like just the most interesting on a filmmaking level. It won the BAFTA, it won an Annie. It would make sense for it to win here, but I am feeling like people are starting to get behind Yuck because that is just the crowd pleaser of the bunch. And Wander to Wonder is like a very dark and depressing short, and that just may not be what the Oscars want in the short categories, especially since a lot of them abstain. I'm sure a lot of voters just want to vote for the cute one here, and that one would be Yuck, so I am going to default to that. This one, I think I might end up changing back to Wonder by the time the ceremony comes around, but for now, I'm just going to close my eyes, throw the dart, landed on Yuck. Live action short, I have not seen these ones. I wish I did, but I just didn't get the time, and then bam, they were gone from the theater by me. Really sad, so I don't have the personal insight into any one of these, but just looking at which one people are starting to get behind here, it looks like Alien or Alien or however you pronounce it is the one that is gaining the most momentum here as of late. It is about ice and ice raids and all that. It's a very timely film about a very important issue in the United States today. Everything I've heard about it seems like this is kind of just in line with what would win one of these shorts categories. All right, so that's it with my Oscar predictions. I am hoping that I get the majority of these right. There are a few categories that I am just kind of all up in the air about. I mean, picture, actress, screenplay, all tight races. The 3 shorts categories, I mean, I could have just botched all of those, even though that I am just kind of going with the front runners of the moment that are starting to get that momentum. I think I'm going to be okay on the text and the other above the line categories that I didn't mention. But yeah, drop your predictions down below in the comments. I would love to see what you're predicting, which ones you're predicting different than me. Are you predicting Conclave for picture or Torres or Madison for actress or, just whatever, man. And yeah, if you liked what you saw here today and you would like to see more, subscribe to follow the odyssey that is Oscar season.